And then I, continued to be a disc jockey for several years after that. So I continued playing Johnny Cash as long as I could because I was a huge fan.
The friendship between Willie Nelson and Johnny Cash was a sacred thing and rarely shared publicly, until now. What made Nelson keep those memories private for so many years? And why did he choose now to speak out? Now that Willie Nelson has spoken out after nearly a lifetime, the question that everyone is curious about is, how deep was his friendship with Johnny Cash? The bond deep. Willie Nelson and Johnny Cash had a humble beginning in the dynamic music scene of Nashville in the 1960s, which is where the fabled bond between the two is said to have originated. Their first encounter occurred not on a huge stage, but in a tiny, inconspicuous tavern where musicians met to exchange experiences via music. During that period of time, Cash had already established himself as a legendary musician with singles such as I Walk the Line and Folsom Prison Blues. But Nelson was only beginning to establish himself in the music industry. Even though their techniques were quite different, Nelson's laid-back and lyrical approach on the one hand, and Cash's deep and gritty voice on the other, they recognized in one another a dedication to authenticity that they both shared. They grabbed guitars and played together on that fateful night, producing impromptu tunes that marked the beginning of a great bond between them through their musical collaboration. What was first a casual discussion eventually developed into a partnership that was based on the mutual regard that both parties had for the creative integrity of the other. After taping a Christmas special in Switzerland in 1985, Cash gathered together Nelson Waylon Jennings and Chris Christopherson to establish the Highwaymen. This connection reached its zenith throughout their careers, culminating in the formation of the Highwaymen. They arrived back in the United States and went into the studio with producer Chips Moman, who had been inspired by the hotel jam sessions they had been having. Over a decade, they worked together to make 3 albums, the first of which was titled After Themselves and reached #1 on the country charts. The daughter of Cash observed that it came out of pure friendship. There was no marketing guy who said, "This will be a good idea." Nelson is getting up to his 92nd birthday, and he is thinking about how these 4 musicians, who were very powerful on their own, became much more significant when they worked together. They demonstrated that superstars could produce something extraordinary by leaving their egos at the door. Beyond the realm of music, Cash and Nelson connected with one another due to their similar political ideas and principles. They thought that music should accurately reflect life without being influenced by the needs of the industry. Cash stated, "There is too much money being spent on the military and more should be spent on education and welfare." The Highwaymen were outspoken about discussing problems such as the excessive expenditure of the military and the support for social programs. My dad and Cash would get into a fight and not talk, or they'd get mad at Willie because Willie had one more song than everybody else. Jennings' son claimed, revealing that their brotherhood remained unshaken even though they periodically had problems. They argued, but finally stood together, joined by their refusal to be restricted by convention, and their daring to communicate what was on their minds, even when it ruffled feathers. They were like actual siblings, in that they argued with one another but ultimately stood together. As Willie Nelson celebrates yet another birthday, these recollections of Cash are not only a source of nostalgia, rather they are a demonstration of a relationship that has played a significant role in the development of country music for all time. Willie and Johnny's friendship was forged not only through performances and recording sessions, but also through countless quiet, meaningful moments in everyday life. But over the decades, there was something Willie kept to himself. So what made him choose this moment at this age to reveal those memories? Private moments Willie never shared. The quiet moments that Willie Nelson has kept secret up until this point were the foundation upon which Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson formed their friendship above and beyond the stage lights and album recordings. At the time that Nelson is celebrating his 92nd birthday, these beloved memories come back to the surface with a fresh perspective. During the periods of silence that followed the dispersal of crowds, Willie and Johnny frequently found themselves alone with guitars and ideas that were too profound for public consumption. We devoted hours to each other, conversing about music life and our challenges, Nelson says in his memoir. These late-night discussions turned into a haven for both men, allowing them to separate themselves from their public personalities. Willie was particularly captivated by Johnny's path of metaphysical discovery. The man in black was not the only thing Johnny was. According to Nelson, he was a man who was haunted by blackness and who made a profound search for spirituality. Through these personal chats, Willie was able to gain first-hand knowledge of Cash's inner issues, including his struggles with addiction, remorse, and redemption, which had a profound impact on his soul and music. In Willie's mind, there is one recollection that jumps out as very clear. Willie was invited to Johnny's hotel room after he had completed a physically demanding tour stop. While there, Cash sang "I Still Miss Someone" with a level of sensitivity that he rarely displayed on stage. There was no audience, and there was no pretense. Music was more than simply a performance when Johnny was involved. It served as therapy, a means of shrieking without ever having to raise his voice. Willie argues that it is a method to confess without feeling ashamed. That night, the song went from being a success to becoming a confession between friends. It was a moment in which Johnny's suffering and his ability to persevere blended into something that transcended physical reality. In order to maintain the unspoken agreement that existed between them, Nelson safeguarded these intimate encounters for a number of decades. The natural progression of our relationship was the defining characteristic that set it apart. Willie thinks about the fact that words were usually unnecessary. In addition, Willie was aware that Johnny's public issues with addiction forced him to use prudence. I witnessed Johnny battling inner struggles that not everyone knew about, Nelson admits. I was a witness to Johnny's struggle. Their friendship evolved into a kind of sanctuary, a place where they didn't have to be perfect, just present, just real, as the saying goes. Now that Willie is celebrating his 92nd birthday, he is ready to share these memories with others. He does not intend to do so to take advantage of them. Rather, he wishes to pay tribute to a relationship that has endured the test of time and transcended celebrity. These personal memories are just part of a larger story, a story of a deep connection that transcends music and time. So who was Johnny Cash really in Willie Nelson's life? The answer was revealed by him for the first time after nearly a century of silence. Platform location. Willie Nelson has a profound admiration for Johnny Cash, an admiration that spans from his days as a modest DJ to his partnerships with superstars. Willie recognizes that Johnny was more than simply a partner, but rather a cornerstone in Willie's life journey as he focuses on his 92nd birthday festivities. Johnny was a significant figure in Willie's life journey. Willie remembers in retrospect that he first became aware of Johnny in the 1950s when he was working as a DJ in the state of Texas. I started noticing Johnny Cash in the 50s, probably when I was still a DJ in Hillsborough or Fort Worth, Willie says with nostalgia. Willie had been playing Johnny's music non-stop even before they had met, which led to the development of a deep affection for Johnny that would eventually lead to the formation of a brotherhood. The thing that truly earned Willie's admiration was Johnny's ability to persevere through the most difficult times in his life. Johnny was not the type of person who became discouraged quickly. If he fell, he would get back up and continue to battle. In a private conversation, Willie reveals, "That was one of the things I loved most about him." Throughout Johnny's struggles with addiction, Willie stayed unwavering and offered support without passing judgment on Johnny's situation. Willie's artistic perspective was significantly influenced by Johnny's genuine approach to composition and performance. "I always looked at Johnny as someone who was ahead of me, someone who made music the way he wanted to," Willie reveals in detail. Willie's journey through the music industry was shaped by this independent mentality, which he employed throughout his career. The fact that Willie considered Johnny to be one of the first to revolutionize Nashville, one of the rebels we call outlaws, is noteworthy. Willie was motivated to pursue his creative impulses rather than conform to the expectations of the business as a result of this revolutionary approach. The death of Johnny in 2003 left Willie in a condition of complete and utter devastation. Over and above the loss of a fellow musician, he also suffered the loss of a brother, someone whose presence had grown inextricably linked to his own identity. As Willie approaches his 92nd birthday, he continues to keep Johnny's legacy alive even in this day and age. The memories of Johnny, The conversations about music life, perseverance, and passion are all still a part of Willie's musical journey. It is a monument to a relationship that has endured the test of time and circumstance. And Johnny's spirit is brought to the forefront whenever Willie plays songs that they had previously shared. After all that Johnny was to Willie, a brother, a confidant, why is he now at 92 choosing to speak? Is there something that is compelling Willie Nelson to speak a memory, a debt of gratitude, or simply that the time has run out to keep quiet? The answer lies in his own heart, in the moment when age brings the courage to face the old unspoken words. Willie Nelson at 92. Willie Nelson, an outlaw country star, has decided to break decades of silence over his connection with Johnny Cash. This decision comes at a time when Nelson is celebrating his 92nd birthday. The timing of this event is not a coincidence. Rather, it is the result of a profound introspection that can only be brought about by the passage of time. Throughout the history of country music, Willie's milestone celebrations have evolved into significant events. It was a fantastic two-night event at the Hollywood Bowl, including 50 artists held in honor of his 90th birthday in 2023. The concert was then broadcast on CBS and issued as a deluxe version to pay tribute to his good buddy. The event gathered together legendary figures like George Strait and Chris Christopherson, who, despite being 86 years old and experiencing deteriorating health, made a special appearance. The fact that Nelson celebrates his birthday on both April 29th and April 30th is interesting. I was born before midnight on the 29th, but it didn't get registered in the county courthouse until the next day, the 30th, according to his explanation. So, I just do both days. Willie's approach to life, which is to embrace complexity and to refuse to be restricted by traditional bounds, is aptly symbolized by this dual celebration. As Willie reaches the 10th decade of his life, he has experienced a tremendous shift in his attitude toward previous partnerships. I don't have any resentment. In a 2018 interview, he made the statement that life is too short, and John was too good a man to stay mad at. A difficult spot in their friendship has been smoothed up by the passage of time as seen by this sentiment. Having outlived the majority of his contemporaries has provided Willie with a perspective that is one of a kind. At the age of 91, he experiences Johnny's presence not in a spooky, ghostly way, but in the melodies, in the rhythm of the road, in the silence before a show when the crowd hasn't yet begun to cheer. In Willie's opinion, legacy is not just about the things that you leave behind, but also about the way that you lived. Johnny Cash emerges not only as a major personality in the world of music, but also as a very human guy who never stopped trying to be better via his recollections. As a result, Willie is now acting as a custodian of memories, ensuring that Johnny's influence goes beyond the songs that top the charts. Johnny's impact permeated a wider sphere than only his songs. The very fact that he existed served as a representation of genuineness, tenacity, and the ability to triumph over challenging personal circumstances. We may say that Willie Nelson has outlasted the stages, the trends, and the noise because he has lived long enough. There is no doubt that the voice of a friend that he can still hear in the stillness is the thing that continues to be the most prominent in his heart. Facing loss. There was a profound sense of loss throughout the country when Johnny Cash passed away in September of 2003, only 4 months after the passing of his companion June Carter. During the time that people were mourning the loss of a cultural icon, radio stations played vintage albums, musicians paid tribute, and tourists traveled to Tennessee. However, Willie Nelson was able to accept the news in a more tranquil setting at Luck Ranch, which is located in the Texas Hill Country. He did so in silence, as if a piece of his soul had been blown away by the wind. The relationship between Willie and Johnny went much beyond the bounds of a traditional creative friendship. They were each other's kindred souls. It wasn't necessary for them to have a lot of conversations or to be in the same place all the time, but once they did get together, it was as if there had never been any separation between them. Willie did not cry in front of the camera or give a lengthy statement on television when his closest buddy went away. He did not do any of these things. Silence was his choice. There was a profound hush, After learning of Johnny's passing, a close friend described the moment when they were informed of his passing. Willie might be seen sitting on the porch, cradling his trigger guitar as if it were a piece of his history. In particular, he continued to play the older songs, particularly Highwayman, which was the tune that the band used to sing together. In contrast, he played the instrument more slowly, lower, and more quietly this time, as if each note was a whispered farewell. During that period, Willie declined interviews that were relevant to Johnny's passing for the most part. While he was imprisoned away at the ranch, he would spend long days going around the trees where they used to sit smoking, exchanging stories and creating songs in complete stillness. According to a former employee of the ranch, on one occasion I observed him gazing out the window while his hand was still on the neck of the guitar, but he was not strumming the instrument. Just keep silent. It seemed as though he was interested in what Johnny had to say. A few months later, Willie started performing a ballad that had no title of its own. It was a ballad that was peaceful, mournful, and slightly dismal. The song was not included on any album, nor was it made available to the public. His only performance of it was at private performances, which were only open to people who knew Johnny and had been with him in the past. A revelation was made by Willie's nephew. It was referred to by Uncle Willie as the song for people who don't need to say goodbye, because he stated that there was no need to say farewell between two persons like him, and Johnny, all that was required was a melody. Several years later, during a talk that was quite uncommon regarding Johnny Cash, a journalist asked him, "What is it about Johnny that you miss the most?" After giving it some thought, Willie spoke slowly. "Johnny's presence was like a large tree," the speaker said. "When it was there, you believed that it would be there for all of time. The sky appeared to be larger, but it also appeared to be less full as it dropped. And then you came to the realization that the shadow had been obstructing the sun's rays for you, without your knowledge." The death of Willie signified not only the conclusion of his life, but also the beginning of a period of stillness that lasted for over 20 years in his spirit, a quiet that he did not begin to recount until he was 92 years old. This was not because he had forgotten, but rather because the stories that had not been spoken deserved to be heard. Have you ever lost a soulmate and felt like the world had gone silent? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more interesting updates.